And through late March and early April, King Zog made repeated and desperate attempts to secure international support, of course, um, as we've mentioned, contacting Britain and France, but those efforts largely collapsed. But Zog's efforts also extended to Berlin. According to later accounts from Queen Geraldine, Zog's envoys twice approached Hitler and only were rebuffed each time with the message that Albanian's fate should be resolved through Mussolini. And King Zog also engaged the Balkan Entente, particularly Greece and Yugoslavia, hoping to trigger a regional solidarity against Italian aggression, but his appeals emphasized Albania's strategic importance and the risk that Italy's expansion posed to all Balkan states. And yet his position was undermined by Albania's diplomatic isolation, and the perception among the neighboring powers that intervention in Albania would merely provoke Italian aggression without guaranteeing any kind of military success. And by April 6th, King Zog's last formal appeals to Yugoslavia had been rejected or ignored, and he was left with no realistic foreign support as Italian forces prepared to land. And inside Albania, the king's government struggled to present a united front, and the cabinet meetings from the 28th of March through April 6th were marked by intense disagreement and indecision. And King Zog faced ministers torn between advocating for resistance and seeking conciliatory terms with the Italian government. And King Zog was given a final ultimatum on April 6th, and it expired at noon that day. And in the evening, the Albanian parliament and government resolved to reject the Italian demands and to resist militarily, which was a rather hollow resolution. But because Albania's army numbered fewer than 8,000 active personnel, and many were equipped with outdated or inadequate arms, and public morale was questionable. And yet, they had no choice, either annexation through agreement or through invasion. So, on April 6th, with the ultimatum being declined, the Italian warships assembled off Durrës and Vlorë. And Italian planes dropped propaganda leaflets over Tirana, instructing the civilians to not resist, and declared the Italian intentions as peaceful and restorative, which was definitely not true. A special parliamentary session that day ultimately resolved to resist, and yet it was way too late to coordinate an effective military defense. Mobilization orders were issued, but there was intense confusion. As I mentioned before, only 4,000 men were really at arms at any time. Reserves were called up, but logistical difficulties and poor communications meant that many were never effectively deployed. And Albania's paramilitary police force played actually a more active role, particularly in Durrës, and yet their numbers were small and their armaments were limited. King Zog's government lacked both institutional structure and popular mobilization mechanisms to mount a meaningful resistance, which was a failure exacerbated by the internal political divisions in Albania and the long-standing Italian influence economically over Albania's military command structure. And meanwhile, demonstrations in Tirana showed public opposition against Italian demands, but King Zog himself already arranged the evacuation of his wife Queen Geraldine, as well as his newborn son, off to Greece. And on the dawn of April 7th, the final phase began. The actual Italian invasion forces, numbering 22,000, with substantial tank support and naval artillery and poorly organized air support initiated the first landings along the Albanian coast, and a long anticipated subjugation of the Albanian state was to begin, not through political absorption, but through open military conquest. So, at dawn on April 7th, 1939, Good Friday, the Italian invasion of Albania commenced. The operation involved approximately 22,000 troops under Alfredo Guzzoni, and the main landing was focused on the port city of Durrës, which is chosen for its proximity to Albanian capital Tirana, and it was a very big port. And supporting landings also took place in Vlorë and Shëngjin, but Durrës was the main objective, both militarily and symbolically. And despite extensive political preparation, the military execution of the invasion was characterized by immense confusion, logistical shortcomings, and a level of improvisation that would have been highly disastrous against a more organized or and motivated opponent. But the invasion commenced. So the Italian landing force in Durrës consisted of 2 battalions, the 3rd Regiment, and yes, the 3rd Infantry Regiment, a battalion of the 47th Infantry Regiment Ferrara, as well as 5 Bersaglieri battalions, and there were tank battalions equipped with L-335 tankettes, artillery batteries, and anti-aircraft units. And in total, the Italian landing force was supported by 400 aircraft and 300 light tanks to support the 22,000 troops. Saranda was included as an additional landing site alongside Vlorë and Shëngjin. The landing force in Durrës, numbering around 4,700 men for the initial wave, was transported and moved on merchant ships, supported by naval squadron commanded by Admiral Ettore Sportiello, and heavy cruisers like the Zara, Pola, Fiume, and Gorzia provided naval gunfire support alongside destroyers and a number of torpedo boats. The Albanian defenders on Durrës, in stark contrast, numbered only 360 men, including Frontier Guard Battalion, an Albanian Army Battalion, Marines from the Royal Albanian Navy, and a small mountain battery equipped with 275 13mm guns. And most were poorly armed, with around 50 rounds of ammunition per man. Most were equipped mainly with rifles, a handful of machine guns, and very limited ammunition, approximately 50 rounds per person. And the defenders were commanded by Major Abbas Kupi, the commander of the Durrës Gendarmerie, the police military force, and in addition, some military volunteers, some local volunteers in Durrës also joined in the fight, who were motivated by Albanian nationalist patriotism above all else.